Tech Cocktail Conversations, candid insights from startup founders, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders from around the globe.
So I'm Jeff Janer. I'm co-founder and EVP at Springpad. So this is my fifth startup, going all the way back to 1980. I got the gray hair here. Most of all of them, up until this one actually, have been more focused on B2B, and this is the first kind of direct-to-consumer startup that we've launched. Starting up 5 companies in Boston has been great. My home is here, and there's a great community in terms of talent that comes out of the universities here. I've worked with some great people through 3 companies now, so it's just been a great environment to make things happen. It's small enough that you get to know people and you can build your network, but yet it's large enough that you're not in a tiny little place with just not enough resources to draw from. I think that my favorite thing about the Boston startup community is, again, that it is small enough that you can kind of try things out either with potential customers or with investors, and again with talent that you've known for a long time, so you can get some pretty rapid feedback on whether you've got something that's interesting. Well, the thing that took me a little while to learn is that you need to begin at the end. And that sounds kind of strange, but if you don't know where you want to end up, it's kind of hard to make decisions, or it's just harder to make decisions. So it took me a little while to kind of figure that out. And then since then, it's served me really well to be thinking about where you want to end up before you get started. I think besides knowing where you want to go before you get started, the other piece of advice I would give is you need to hire 8s and 9s. And it's not just for your employees, it's for your board members, it's for your advisors. You have to stretch, obviously, when you're just starting up, but don't compromise with 5s and 6s. Go for the 8s and 9s. It's going to return immeasurably in terms of your efforts. Finding 8s and 9s is not easy. You know, whether it's recruiters, whether it's networking, I think the challenge is not so much finding them, but attracting them and getting them to share your passion and share your vision. So that's where the real sales job comes in, I think. It's not so much finding them, but getting them on board. Part of getting acquired is this notion of beginning at the end. If you have a notion of where you want to end up, if it's an IPO or trade sale, a merger, whatever it is, you can groove your decisions, you can groove your hiring, you can groove all of the important factors. I mean, it could be somewhat risky, but essentially, if you know where you want to end up, you can build your business to get yourself there. Springpad is interesting. So we're a consumer tech startup here in Boston, of which you could probably count those on one hand. So the challenge was not so much having inspiration and ideas from here, but just kind of looking around out at the world and seeing what we could see. The other thing that's interesting is we have a pretty visionary idea of what the possibilities are for Springpad, something that really hasn't been done before. And that's the notion that instead of a brand trying to infer what your interests are and send you relevant advertising, our notion is that if the consumer tells you what they're interested in, and you have something that's either information or offers or alerts that pertain to that, that's a pretty darn good lead. And it's good for the consumer as well. So we really are carving new ground in terms of, you know, where did we get this idea from? It comes more from our background than from seeing somebody else doing it right now. That said, obviously there's companies out there. We've been compared to Evernote on one hand. We've been compared to Pinterest on the other hand. In fact, I think some of our recent launch headlines were all about Evernote and Pinterest having a baby, and that being Springpad, which is okay, but I think ultimately our vision is quite different than both of them. I think what drives me the most is two things. One is a passion to do something that hasn't been done before, And the second is more of a value, which is contempt for obstacles. Is just, I'm going to find a way to make something happen, and just driven in that fashion. So those two things have kind of stood me well over the course of 5 startups.